12 days away from doing this, you know?
It's the day of retribution.
They were very heroic.
My wife and I will never have closure.
The warning signs were always there.
Hey there, nice to see you back on my channel. Did you ever look at a teenage YouTuber and dream of stepping into their shoes one day? It can look like a dream job. You're still super young, you've got lots of time after school, and you get to talk about your favorite topics and make millions of subscribers in the meantime. What's not to love about this? After all, so many teenagers want to be popular. But popularity isn't as sweet as some people might think. There's a lot of hatred online, and people seem to feel more entitled to share it from behind their screens. Then there's a lot of pressure keeping your fans happy and the lack of privacy once you're properly famous. A real YouTube star rarely has any more time to themselves, and followers can be harder and harder to please. Still, few YouTube stars react the same way these people did. Today, we'll be discussing young YouTubers who lost everything: their happiness, their moral compass, and their most basic common sense. It seems like a very long road from the YouTube star to mass murderer, but in some cases, it was just a matter of seconds. Watch on, but be warned, these cases are about to get very dark. Randy Robert Stair was born on September 17, 1992, and raised in Dallas, Pennsylvania. Not much is known about his family, but from a pretty young age, Randy showed signs of concerning mental health. In his early years, he was a very shy boy and complained about being unable to make friends. During middle school, he started giving absolutely macabre endings to all his stories. He also developed an obsession with death and taking one's life. He kept fantasizing about dying in a plane crash or jumping from a skyscraper to his death. Look at this very early video he made.
It's not that easy. I can't suffer, not just me, but all the people who made me suffer. Why do I die so much? It's good to me. No, it's not.
This video should have been concerning enough, considering Randy's age at the time. But somehow all his cries for help were left unseen for years and years, at least until the YouTube days. Randy started his first YouTube channel in 2008. It was called Pioneer Productions, and he went under the name Andrew Blaze. It's exactly what you'd expect from a 16-year-old's YouTube channel. Randy reacting to video games and skits with a toy frog. But before he graduated from high school, Randy developed a strange obsession: Danny Phantom, the American animated series where a teenage boy becomes a human ghost hybrid. Randy didn't just like the series. He claimed he'd been in love with the female character Ember McLean since middle school.
The poster behind me, those were inspired by Ember McLean, which is a ghost from a TV show called Danny Phantom, which started back in 2003, 2004. You know, I was in late elementary school at that time. But this ghost, this woman, always connected with me. But ever since I first saw her, something changed.
Randy went on to create his own spin-off series called Ember's Ghost Squad. He even made stickers of his own characters and put them on his car. There's nothing wrong with fandom, but in Randy's case, Ember just seemed a confirmation of his existential angst and desire to disappear from the real world. As his YouTube channel progressed, Randy started talking about all the ways he felt ignored and mistreated by the world. For starters, all the horrible stories he'd written in school went unnoticed by uncaring teachers.
I must have wrote like 4 or 5 stories where the character got killed at the end, and I actually turned these in as assignments, and I never got like any like weird looks from the teacher or anything. She was a nice teacher and everything. Really great. Yeah, the teacher never like felt concerned or anything. I just remember not getting any feedback in terms of that.
By the time he graduated from high school, Randy hated his life. He had no direction, he didn't know what to do, and he didn't like doing anything. YouTube was his only passion, and by now, it was the only thing he was good at. He got a job at Weis Supermarket, but as you can imagine, it wasn't his dream job. On top of it, he lost his brother's best friend in a car crash. For him, this was the last straw. He became obsessed with death, and this became the main topic on his channel.
I think about death a lot. You know, I take no shame in thinking about dying a lot, but I seriously do think about death all the time, and it's not a good thing.
Soon enough, Randy was involved in a car crash too. Sadly, this only fueled his obsession with death. Now he was no longer afraid of it. He was afraid of getting old, and he preferred dying young to seeing wrinkles on his face.
There would be no possible way I could live until I was 60-something. Not a chance in hell. Honestly, I don't know how people do it.
Meanwhile, Randy became uncomfortable with something else. He felt like a woman trapped in a man's body, often stealing his mother's clothes to cross-dress at home. Soon, he began feeling disgusted by his own body.
I sit here alone on my bed full of emptiness. I'm wearing my girl clothes with my legs crossed. Why am I damned to spend 2 to 3 decades in this disgusting body?
Did you notice how he said 2 to 3 decades? He wasn't planning on living for too long. He was already in his 20s at this time. By 2016, he was deeply upset that no matter how feminine he would dress and behave, his parents wouldn't notice. They didn't seem to care, and to Randy, it seemed like nobody did. Desperate to find a way to attract attention, he started looking at violent people. He became obsessed with the Columbine School massacre, but he wasn't going to shoot people inside a school. Instead, he diverted his anger towards the Weis supermarket, the place he had been working at for 4 years and hated ever since.
Supermarket for 4 years. I'm about to set the place on fire. Right now, that's my only source of income, and I'm not making a lot. I wish I could just do this forever. I wish I could just interact with viewers, do videos, but life doesn't allow that.
Indeed, Randy was becoming pretty popular online, but he was aware that he couldn't become self-sufficient as a YouTuber. Or perhaps he could, but it would have taken a lot more work. As his YouTube videos got darker, so did his plans. In fact, in 2017, Randy began recording himself as if he was counting down the days to his final piece, a massacre where he would take his own life and take as many people as he could with him.
14, 13, 12 days away from doing this, you know? This is it. There's a lot on my mind. If you're in my position, you'd have a lot on your mind too.
The darkest part was that his plans were very obvious. Thousands of people saw these videos and were not concerned enough to raise a flag.
Just under 2 weeks to live. You got 2 weeks to live. What do? Goddess forbid if somebody does see me blocking the exits, I don't know what they'd say.
During his last 2 weeks, Randy also recorded several videotapes for his parents to watch after his death. In these videos, he basically shared his warped view on life with the world. He made extremely racist and homophobic commentaries and described himself as a narcissist. Although his parents didn't see the videotapes until his death, they saw his behavior leading up to it. About a month before his death, Randy's own mother took him to a gun shop so he could purchase a shotgun. Then, someone in his family filmed him practicing shooting in his backyard. It's worrying, to say the least. And do you see how his shirt reads Natural Selection? This is actually the same shirt Eric Harris wore when he committed the Columbine massacre. Sheesh. Randy himself wondered how his parents never saw these warning signs and never talked to him about it. Again, he felt ignored and even more motivated to commit a horrible crime and finally get some attention. There's an even darker twist to the story. Randy decided to flip a coin in order to choose between committing a massacre at home or at the Weis supermarket.
Got a 1983 quarter right here. You believe in fate? Here's the fate test. I'm gonna flip this 3 times, or the best out of 3 rather, and if it's heads, I'll do it here. If it's tails, supermarket.
Can you believe he let the fate of his family in the hands of a coin flip? 4 days before the massacre, Randy recorded his last video and let the world know this was his last one. He also announced exactly what he was going to do.
Your life up. I can't wait. I want that supermarket to be closed for like a month or go out of business. It's a crime scene.
Randy also said this was all thanks to his favorite cartoon character, Ember. He was going to be reincarnated as her after he took his own life. On the morning of June 7th, 2017, Randy arrived at his workplace, Weis Supermarket, and filmed this. He was scouting for exit points and ways to block these. Later that day, he filmed himself loading his guns, called Mackenzie and Rachel. In the very early hours of June 8th, Randy was at Weiss working his night shift. His colleagues were loading the shelves and preparing to call it a night and go home. Meanwhile, Randy went to the exits and barricaded them with pallets. The worst part about this is that he had told the internet about it days before. Anyone could have reported this, a worried viewer, or even his work colleagues who Randy wasn't hiding from. That same night, Randy had tweeted some very disturbing videos, one of which was called tapes. Around 1, Randy pulled out his 2 shotguns from the duffel bag he had on him. There were 4 work colleagues inside: Victoria, Brian, Terry, and Kristen. Victoria and Kristen were stocking shelves and listening to music on their headphones. First, Randy Victoria several times. Then he saw Kristen, shocked to see her colleague down. He just stared at her and walked on. He shot Brian in the head, chest, groin, and legs. Finally, it was Terry's turn. Kristen was just left in the store, wondering if she was dreaming. In a moment of pure adrenaline, she ran past Randy to the front door, moved the pallet, and pushed it into the blocked sliding doors so hard that she dislocated her shoulder. Finally, she made it to the parking lot. While Kristen called the police, Randy shot multiple products in the store, trying to make some canisters explode, but failing. Finally, he took his own life. If the police detectives wondered what had made Randy commit the worst crime, the answer was never hidden. They soon found his journals, videotapes, and social media posts, all clearly documenting his declining mental health and obsession with committing a massacre. There was nothing hidden about Randy's plan, and there never was. It's particularly sad that the gruesome murders could have been prevented so many times by so many people, and Randy knew this too. In fact, it was what infuriated him the most.
The warning signs were always there. They were there from the beginning. You could always say, what if, what if, what if? What could we have done? How didn't we know? It was all there in front of your face,
Perhaps this is a very dark lesson for people who don't take those around them seriously. When someone is talking about death and every single day, perhaps that's a red flag and they need help. This next story takes us to Colorado in 2019 at a local STEM school. STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. So STEM schools are focused on teaching these 4 disciplines in a practical way. On May 7th, 2019, just before 2 p.m., the students in class 107 were analyzing a movie called The Princess Bride. It was going to be a relaxed class where students could discuss the film and draw some conclusions that would help them later in life in various social situations. But their lives were about to take a very dark twist. Just around that time, 18-year-old student Devin Erickson arrived at school. He had missed every other period, but he would make it to the movie class. He entered the classroom, didn't say hi to the teacher, and rushed to the other end of the classroom, while everyone was looking at him strangely. There, he crouched down and pulled something out of his bag. It was a handgun. That's when he shouted, "Everybody down!" He was about to pull the trigger and everyone in his sight. But then something amazing happened. Devin's classmate, Kendrick Castillo, jumped on top of Devin and pushed him to the floor. Devin shot Kendrick several times, but he couldn't get up to any more people. After watching the scene in horror, 2 more classmates, Joshua Jones and Brendan Bailey, hurled themselves on top of Devin. Within minutes, police officers flooded the school and reached class 107. Students were taken outside the school and Devin was arrested on the spot. Meanwhile, people couldn't believe how 3 18-year-olds put their lives at risk to save their friends.
They were very heroic. I can't thank them enough.
But the shootings weren't over. When the police stormed into the school determined to speed up the rescue, a security guard panicked and fired at a police officer. He missed the officer but injured a student instead. Imagine the panic, chaos, and fear during a murder spree. While everyone was trying to recover from the shock and check if their friends were okay, the police sent a bomb robot throughout the school to check if Devin hadn't made any other gruesome plans. While the school was safe from bombs, the police did find materials to make explosives in Devin's car. Kendrick Castillo died on the way to the hospital. Now, Devin could be charged with first-degree murder. It wasn't looking good for him, but that was the least of people's problems. People at the school, and needless to say, Devin's family, had a million questions. Why had he done this? Had he been planning this for a long time? Who else knew about it? It turns out that Devin had planned the school massacre together with his friend and fellow student Alec McKinney. But on the morning of May 7th, when the two boys arrived at school together, Alec went to the other side. As soon as he pulled out his gun, a security guard noticed him and told him to call the attack off. Then, Alec turned the gun toward him, but within seconds, the guard had taken the gun away from him. Later that day, Devin and Alec were brought into the police interrogation room. The detective's question was simple: why? Both boys said the same thing, and it wasn't looking good for the STEM school. Apparently, the school was an extremely high-pressure environment where students' mental health was at an all-time low. Just the year before, someone had made an anonymous complaint to the Board of Education's director. Whether this was the story the boys had agreed upon or there was some serious truth in it was yet to be discovered. Apparently, the STEM school had sued the person who made the anonymous complaint, saying they claimed that there was no evidence to support any of the allegations raised. When the trial began for Devin and Alec, they were pretty adamant the school was the main villain in the story. Alec told a detailed account of how he was severely bullied as he transitioned from woman to man. Apparently, he had reached an all-time low that year when he wanted to take his own life as a result of the bullying. When he went to the school counselor and told him about this, he was sent straight to a mental hospital. This was already a strange move, but what's even stranger is that the hospital returned him home the very next morning. Delusioned and disappointed, Alec then said he wanted the other students to experience bad things and have to suffer from trauma. Alec wasn't just talking about the bullying. When he was very little, his father had made him, his mom, and his siblings get into a car at knife point. It turns out that Alec's father had been towards his whole family for years. Alec even started hearing voices as a result of this. He had been on medication for a few good years, but during his senior year of high school, he stopped taking it. In his words, he didn't want to be alone. During the trial, the prosecution read a transcription between Alec and his mom. "Did you really fire I taught you so much. I have nothing left for me." The dark truth of Alec's mind and sorrows were his only defense. Devin's case was different though. When he asked why he had done this, he just said he was terrified of Alec. He too had been bullied for his transgender status, and Alec's horrific plan appealed to him. He wanted to get his revenge on the students who had brought him down for years. On the morning of the attack, Devin and Alec were barely recuperating from a wild party at Alec's place. His parents were away for the weekend, and he had invited some students to crash there, consume illegal substances, and wreak havoc all night long. There's a video showing Alec forcing Devin to do more substances. Then the boys tried to set Alec's mom's car on fire. After everyone else was gone, Alec threatened Devin with an axe. Then, using the axe, he broke into the family safe and stole 3 rifles. That's when they headed to school, but not before Alec wrote on his parents' closet, "The voices win." In a pretty outrageous twist, the boys started testifying against each other in court. Devin was saying Alec forced him into committing a massacre and that he was scared of him. Alec was saying it was all Devin's plan, and Devin kept saying how he wanted to kill someone. Alec said he was basically the designated scapegoat.
As the plan did progress, we decided that it would be best if we blamed it all on me.
Alec was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility for parole after 20 years, as he was 16 years old at the time of his arrest. With Devin, it was different. Not only was he 18, but the judge said he was particularly put off by his lack of emotion throughout the trial. From prison, Alec showed remorse for what happened because of their gruesome plan. A student died, and many others would have had he not stopped it.
The amount of pain it causes to anyone who ever cared about you, to the innocent people. Don't be a coward and hide behind a Be brave and learn how to get help.
In May 2020, a memorial was built for Kendrick Castillo. If he can't be saved anymore, he did save a whole school, and he will be forever remembered for it.
My wife and I will never have closure. We'll never find peace. Evil walked into that room that day, and Kendrick Castillo stepped up and stopped it.
Our last story starts in London, UK. Elliot Rodger was born on July 24th, 1991. He grew up with his younger sister Georgia and his parents. His father Peter was a filmmaker and a photographer. His mother Lee Chen was a nurse, but she also worked on film sets. So when Elliot was 5, the family decided to relocate to Los Angeles. After all, that's the right place to be if you're in the movie business, right? 2 years later, Peter and Lee got divorced. This left Elliot in shambles, and his life became disorganized. He would divide his time equally between the two parents, never knowing who he'd spend the next weekend with. Although he performed well in school, Elliot was described as a shy boy with a lot of insecurities. Just months after his mother had left the family home, Peter brought his new girlfriend, Samaya, home. This was another blow to Elliot. He was barely getting used to the new status quo when it changed again. Now he had a stepmom too. And within a few years, he had a stepbrother too, Jazz. Do you see how unhappy Elliot looks in this picture? This was his attitude throughout his teenage years, but he wouldn't keep it to himself. During his mid-teens, Elliot started his YouTube channel. He complained about how lonely he always felt, he was depressed, and his only escape was into his past, his happy childhood before the divorce, and everything else.
Elliot Rodger here. And here I am at Serrania Park. The most significant place of my childhood.
Although YouTube seemed to help Elliot channel his frustrations, the bullying at school got worse and worse. One day, a few kids taped his head to a table. Elliot moved schools, but this didn't bring him peace. He never made any friends because of the frequent moving, and he felt increasingly alone. At 16, he saw a psychiatrist. He was prescribed medicine that suppressed schizophrenia, but he refused to take it. This is around the time Elliot started becoming obsessed with having a girlfriend. Elliot didn't have many friends at all. In fact, all he had was online friends who he would play games or chat with. Now he was desperate to at least get the girls' attention. First, he got a driver's license and started dressing better, thinking these are the two main things that will make him more attractive. But he never approached anyone. At school, he would have lunch inside his car and get angry at how people didn't engage with him. His anger became hatred towards anyone who was happy in a relationship. Once he saw a couple holding hands at Starbucks, and he threw hot coffee on them. Skip to June 4th, 2011, Elliot would move homes again, this time to Isla Vista, so that he could attend Santa Barbara City College. Now he had 2 roommates, and he could finally make some friends. But he was so hostile towards them that they moved out after just 1 month, and so did the next 2. By 2012, he dropped out of college and started gambling away his money. Although he was still living in Isla Vista, he wasn't interacting with any of the students, just with his YouTube followers.
Hey, Elliot Rodger here. Right now I'm just taking a walk through the park in this really nice, secluded area. I'm just contemplating about my life and how unfair it's been lately. Ever since I started desiring girls, but they never desired me back. Life has been a living hell.
Loneliness can be a horrible thing to go through at any age. Sadly, Elliot didn't realize that he had to reach out to people in order to make friends and relationships. As months passed and Elliot grew angrier and angrier, he started fantasizing about a day of retribution. A day where he would punish everyone around him for his loneliness. In December 2012, he bought his first gun. By April next year, he had another one. On July 20th, 2013, Elliot attended a party, hoping for some feminine attention. As he got drunk and women kept ignoring him, he climbed a ledge and tried to push a few girls off of it. A couple of men pushed him off instead, and he shattered his left leg into pieces. He needed surgery and a lot of months to recover. But guess what he did during those months? Plan his perfect revenge.
I've been doing a lot of thinking about how sad and unfair my life has been. All because girls haven't been attracted to me. I've had to rot in bleak and sad loneliness. I mean, you give a chance to all these stupid, obnoxious guys that I see you walking with, but you don't give a chance to me. Why not? I'm such a magnificent guy.
By 2014, Elliot was fully recording his descent into madness and posting it on YouTube.
And my view has been ruined by this sight right here.
In front of me, sitting right there on that bench, is a young couple. I was enjoying such a nice view until they came and sat down and started kissing.
Unlike in Randy's case, one of Elliot's viewers actually reported him to the police. Not because he'd done something wrong, but because they were concerned he was unstable. It was a health check. The police knocked on his door and asked him if he was alright. Elliot said he was fine and didn't have any dark thoughts. If the officers had looked inside his bedroom, they would have found his guns and his manifesto lying proudly on his bed. Elliot's day of retribution had begun, and there was no one to stop him. First, he planned to drive to his stepmother's house and her and her son. Then he would drive back to Isla Vista and kill his roommates. Then he wanted to invite other people into his house and take their lives too. Finally, he wanted to kill everyone at Alpha Phi sorority. He thought this was where the prettiest women were. So on May 22nd, 2014, Elliot recorded his last YouTube video.
Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity. Against all of you. I'm 22 years old, and I'm still a virgin. It has been very torturous.
He went on to say how life was unfair to him, insulting all the girls who had ever dared to ignore him.
I will be a god compared to you. You will all be animals. You denied me a happy life. And in turn, I will deny all of you life. It's only fair. I hate all of you.
The next day, Elliot was supposed to drive to his father's home to shoot his family. But at the last minute, Peter decided he wasn't going to leave town. Elliot wouldn't do this. He didn't want to hurt his father. So he turned his attention to his dorm. First, he his two housemates, George and Chang. They died on the spot. They also had a friend visiting, so Elliot took his life too. Elliot them 142 times. Then he emailed his 137-page manifesto to his parents, his therapist, his teachers, and a few dozen people. The therapist was the first to make a phone call 5 minutes after receiving the email. She called Elliot's mother, who called Peter, who called 911. By now, Elliot was knocking on the Alpha Phi sorority's door, but no one answered, so he shot 3 Delta 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 sorority women, killing 2 of them, Cooper and Veronica. Leaving the women in a pool of Elliot went on foot to the nearest supermarket and whoever he would lay eyes on. Another student died, Christopher Martinez. Then Elliot got into his car and continued to shoot through the window at people on the street. Finally, the police stopped him and a shootout commenced. Elliot was shot in the hip, but he continued to drive and crashed into a cyclist. Finally, in a panic, he crashed his car. Seeing there was no way out, he took his own life. But this wasn't over. The whole community was in shock.
6 of its students dead, the University of California, Santa Barbara community is in mourning. The gunman who methodically planned the attack chronicled his descent into a deranged rage.
It was very disturbing to watch Elliot's YouTube videos and witness how he turned from a shy boy into a racist, misogynistic, hateful man with plans for mass. The fact that he took his own life when he was caught only shows how little responsibility he was willing to take for his horrible deeds. Now, all people can try to do is slowly recover from the tragedy. But for Elliot's father, this seems impossible.
It's like a reverse nightmare situation. When you go to sleep normally, you have a nightmare and you wake up and, oh, everything's okay. Yeah. Now I go to sleep, I might have a nice dream. And then I wake up and then slowly the truth of what happened dawns on me, and that is that my son was a mass.
The fact that he missed all the warning signs will haunt him forever. As for Elliot's victims and their families, the truth is even harder to bear. It's a terrible story that makes it truly hard to draw a quick lesson out of and move on. Thanks for watching, you guys. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you next time.